then we'd say, all right, now how do we play? We play by playing through situations. Now we ran into another issue. It's really hard to reconcile what you call vices with blights. If you've got vices built into concessions or built into paths of concessions, then now you have a redundancy with the blights. Why should we bother with vices when we already have blights, which are very nicely tied into the paths we've taken and into the darkening of the soul as a process? Why then should we also have vices start impinging on our paths and concessions and adding complexity to that choice? If we want to see our character, do a bad or weird or shadowy thing, we've already got the blights in place.
Yeah. I mean, the mechanic there is to deal damage so that your soul will darken further.
Keep going.
So I'm just wondering, if you take that out, then the damage would have to come from somewhere else.
The damage to your soul. How am I going to put it? How am I going to put this? You are handed a choice for taking a path or a concession, right? You're handed a choice of two things to choose from. And then you say, I'm going to take that one. And then you'll take some essence damage from that because it's a vice. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how am I going to put this? You've already got the saga and resolve choice there. I'm going to get resolve for doing this, or I'm going to get saga for doing this. So you've already got a resource-based issue at work.
Mm-hmm.
What you should be taking essence damage from is the same way that you take physical damage from things that you confront, things that you run into, things that you see. Things that can do essence damage, things that, how am I going to put this? You've got, first of all, there's the basic redundancy between playing a blight and playing a vice in the first place. Okay. Second, there's the difficult way of saying, look, I'm trying to choose what seems cool for my character right now. What does my character want? Or rather, what do I want for the character confront based on what they want right now? The character has these different things going on, and I think I'm going to choose the concession of, the darkness is fascinating, which is one of the concessions that one of the people came up with, which I thought was a good concession. The darkness is fascinating. The dark magic is fascinating. So he says, well, I'm going to choose that one, let's say. Well, if there's a vice attached to it, then now I have to do something like vicey. So again, it's kind of this mandated part of the activity. And then I take essence damage. Well, I'm already taking a hit because I chose not to get saga. So now I've got this. See what I mean? How there's too many things plastered into specific places.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got if you've got a damage mechanic of essence, do you want that to be internally generated? In other words, do you want it to be generated through the character's own action? Is that what that's there for? You take physical damage by somebody hitting you with an axe. You take essence damage from...
Yeah, the original idea is from... Yeah, your choices.
In that case, you need to stick it only in one place and one place only, and that's in the use of specific abilities or the performance of certain acts. Period. So it's like something you do during Havoc or during an activity that you're actually carrying out. In other words, it should be a form of consequence of doing a thing rather than something that you you kind of have to do in the course of this meta decision and then are forced to play along with.
Okay, I see.
Does that make sense? What I'm really doing is I'm trying to disentangle the twigs.
Yeah.
That's what.
No, I mean it makes sense if that damage can somehow be attached to, like, say, like to the havoc and choices you make there.
And it doesn't have to be that big a deal. I mean, you can just say, when okay, there's two ways to go. One is the hard way. No, when I say hard, I don't mean difficult. I mean concrete, right? Mm-hmm. One is the concrete way, and one is the soft way. They're both good, but they're not the same, and you got to do one or the other. And one, I think, is much more suited for your game. One is like Sorcerer. It's not specified, but there are times when the GM says, wow, I'm calling that morally gray. Make a humanity check. And somebody can say, wow, that's really iffy, Ron. I mean, that's totally gray. I mean, any GM could just do it any time. That's really soft. And I say, yeah, well, everybody's got a moral limit, and this GM has to step up, and the group has to say, all right, we don't even know this guy's moral limits. We don't even have a metric for them. We don't have a table to look up and say, oh, that's not worth a check. Oh, that is. There is no table. You just have this human at the table who just winced. Okay, humanity check. Why? I winced. And if you're not willing to play honestly about that, and you're not willing to trust someone else's honesty about that, don't play this game. Mm-hmm. So that's very soft. A hard mechanic, maybe too hard, is to say that this ability, this ability, this ability, and this ability, those do essence damage when you use them. And you got a few places like that already. Mm-hmm. A third one, which is kind of in between and borders on legalistic, is to have a list of things that if you do, they count as essence damage for you. Which is kind of tricky because you want existentialism. You don't want a fixed morality.
Right, for sure.
Right. So, and it's already built in to some extent, just like the humanity check is also existential in Sorcerer because it's a roll. So you've already got the roll as to whether, when you cross a threshold, whether you feel it or not. So that's already in there. So maybe it's not so bad. But I think that you need to think about how people take essence damage and have it be its own block of activity and its own block of experience in the game. If you want to base it off of a player choice to do something, which it sounds like you do, then, state what that is. And you've got, the sky's the limit. There's so many places in which it could occur. It could be like a set of generic activities, like, do I kill a sleeping person? Do I kill a helpless person? Something like that. Or it could be something that's, for example, tied to a given stock. For these people, they take essence damage this way. I don't know if you want to do that. I'm just spitballing. The point is that there's lots of places in your game where you could slot it in. But it would make a lot more sense for it to be slotted into something that's always available for any player to take essence damage. Shit, you could be, you could be super nasty. If you want to, again, this is me spitballing. You could be super nasty by taking out the bargaining step of havoc entirely and instead saying shift the die difference by one step if you take, the result as essence damage.
Okay, wait, say that one more time?
Sure. This would take away, except for certain abilities perhaps, take away all the essence issues that you talked about, right? That you have in there. Mm-hmm. Just take it out. Take away the bargaining step from Havoc. Just have this is the GM's call. Here's the situation. This is the split. It's you and your abilities and your rerolls. live with it. And then the one way that the player can adjust the havoc split is to say, I'll take the essence hit. And the split is shifted by 1 die in their favor. And their soul's darkened. In other words, it's just built into the universe that you get luckier, but it's bad for you.
Yeah, I got you.
Now, I'm not saying, fictionally, you'll notice that I didn't say, and you have to do a bad thing, right? I didn't say, and, express how your character, does something wicked. Why? Why wouldn't I have that proviso in there? Because if that mechanic were in there, guaranteed that more times than not, the players will do that anyway, and they'll like it. It's more fun that way. So, I'm saying it's very important not to over-purpose the role play.
It's what?
It's very important not to over-purpose acts of self-expression in characters and players. So if you say, invoke your blight, do a shitty thing, get a bonus, that kind of thing, or whatever. I'm not talking about this game. I'm talking about any game.
Yeah.
It has a laborious feel to it. It has a laborious process to it. You're play acting your character. You didn't suddenly say, now's the time. I want that die. I'm going for it. The darkness is in me right now. I want it so badly. I want that higher split. And if they do that with that sense of drive, that player will say, yeah, and I spit on him. After I sink my sink my axe in, I made the roll, fantastic. Now I spit on him. They'll do that. So it is. So again, I'm not necessarily. I just stated 3 places where you could insert how you take essence damage. Doing all of them is by no means what I'm recommending. What I am saying is find the place where you think the player will respond in that fashion. And make sure it's not redundant with something else. That's why I said take out the bargaining step. Because if you're going to have essence play that role, you don't want some other way to do it at that moment.
I got you, yeah.
So that's what I mean by kind of sandblasting, right? The components that you have.